Hello, I'm David Allen. Welcome to the Not Bad series. Today we're looking at 10 things you need to know about buying a four-wheel drive. So this video is relevant to people who want a four-wheel drive for their intended purpose, such as going off-road or remote travel into Australia's amazing outback, such as wilderness adventures to Cape York or the Kimberley or the Simpson Desert, etc. Of course, what buyers want in a four-wheel drive varies enormously, yet the principles in this video will apply to all buyers. Unless, of course, you're planning to use your four-wheel drive as a town car, where tow trucks and mechanics are readily available. In that case, not all of the criteria may apply. There's a lot of diverse opinion out there on this subject and a plethora of four-wheel drive reviews. Most reviews, however, ignore the most important criteria when buying a four-wheel drive and often are not helpful. I've owned 10 four-wheel drives since 1985, and I will cut to the chase and tell you how I choose a four-wheel drive. I currently own a Toyota Land Cruiser 200, which is my 9th Land Cruiser in a row. And you will hear me favour Toyota, but I'm not sponsored by Toyota. So here we go. Here's the 10 things you need to know about buying a four-wheel drive. Number 1, reliability. A mechanically reliable vehicle is paramount. A breakdown in remote country will not only ruin your holiday, it can also be very expensive to get a tow truck into remote areas. It could cost you $4,000 to recover your vehicle. And you could also put you and your family in an extreme risk situation. It's not easy to get the facts on a vehicle's reputation on reliability. For me, I've mitigated this risk mostly in the past by buying new Toyotas or Toyotas with low kilometres. Toyota has a reputation for being over-engineered with bulletproof reliability. Now you might think I'm biased, but on the other hand, there is a reason why Toyota rules the bush. A strong dealer network is very important. Number 2, a manufacturer that does the right thing. Some manufacturers do the right thing when a customer has a problem, and some do not. It's also very hard to get the facts on this issue, so you just need to do your homework. Long warranties may not always help if they're from one of those manufacturers who have a reputation for not doing the right thing. However, to get a good experience, you do need to do your bit as the consumer. You need to service the vehicle at the correct intervals. You need to get it serviced by the manufacturer's dealer and use genuine parts. And I would recommend all those 3 things apply even when the vehicle's out of warranty. Number 3, cost of ownership. You need to assess and compare all the costs of ownership on the vehicles you're looking at. And of course, poor reliability, which equals repair costs out of warranty, is one of the costs of ownership you need to consider. The biggest cost of ownership by far is depreciation. And that varies significantly between brands. The most sought after vehicles has the lowest depreciation. So there's my top 3: reliability, a manufacturer that does the right thing, and cost of ownership. Those top 3 are rarely, if ever, considered in four-wheel drive reviews. So number 4, four-wheel drive capability. You will need a highly capable four-wheel drive. It's no place for soft-roaders or all-wheel drives. And the number 1 issue with capability is ground clearance. There's plenty of good four-wheel drive reviews out there on most vehicles, so you just need to do your research. Number 5, new versus second-hand. I understand not everyone is able to buy a new four-wheel drive or even a four-wheel drive with low kilometres. Nevertheless, for me nowadays, I always buy new for the following reasons. Firstly, vehicles are much more reliable nowadays than they were years ago. But on the other hand, these modern turbo intercooled diesel engines can experience catastrophic failure, particularly with injectors, which necessitates a new engine. That can cost up to $20,000 and it's not something you can insure against. This failure is rare. Nevertheless, I want the protection of a factory warranty. A factory warranty plus the extended factory warranty, which you can buy, gives you full factory warranty for up to 7 years. When buying new, I'm starting with 0 on my odometer, which means I can keep that vehicle longer without getting into really high kilometres by the time it's has to be changed over. And the lower the kilometres, the better the reliability. You'll spend at least $10,000 on aftermarket equipment to properly equip your four-wheel drive for remote adventures. And you may get very little of that back come time to sell. So the longer you can keep it, the better, to minimise that annual cost of depreciation, and you can keep a new car longer. I got a GVM upgrade on my Land Cruiser, which gave me an extra 300 kilos in payload, and you can only do that on a new vehicle before its first registration. Capped cost servicing is only available on new vehicles, and you can pick your colour with a new vehicle. I tend to pick non-metallic white because it's cooler, doesn't show the scratches. If you do get a bad scratch, you can generally polish that out by hand, and if you get minor scratches and stone chips, you can touch them up with touch-up paint, which tends to be invisible. Nevertheless, if you can't afford a new four-wheel drive, I would suggest buying your preferred four-wheel drive in a second-hand version with as low kilometres as possible, rather than buying another brand as new where it may not tick all your boxes. Number 6, payload. This is a poorly understood issue, and the bottom line is you must not exceed the GVM of your vehicle, which is the maximum weight your vehicle can carry. I would recommend you determine ahead of time what your payload is going to be, and I would literally measure item by item, which is a one-off task because that information will be relevant to in the long term, and you can update that as you buy new gear, and that'll tell you what your payload is going to be, and you can then compare that to the payload specs on the vehicle you're considering. And if you're towing, remember to include the tow ball download weight in your payload calculation. Wagons have much less payload than utes. This is particularly relevant on wilderness adventures where you'll carry about 100 kilos more gear than you would on a non-remote trip. For example, 2 people going on a wilderness adventure would have a minimum payload of about 700 kilos. And if you've got some heavy aftermarket gear like bull bar, winch, rear wheel carrier, side steps, you could easily have 850 kilo payload. And again, remember, payload includes passengers and fuel. So 850 payload 850 kilo payload on a Land Cruiser 200, for example, is 240 kilos too much. That's in excess of the vehicle specs on payload. So I solved that on my Land Cruiser with a GVM upgrade, which gives me an extra 300 kilo payload. You can see a separate Not Bad episode on this subject, which is titled How to Manage Your Payload and Not Overload Your Four-Wheel Drive, and that has some tips on how to solve that problem. Number 7, wagon versus ute. The payload is much higher on utes, but it does come with a stiffer ride, so you will find wagons more comfortable. If you want a canopy on a ute, they're around 75 kilos, so that is 75 kilos off your payload capacity. And remember, utes are longer than wagons, so they may not fit in your garage. Number 8, diesel versus petrol. Most four-wheel drives these days are diesel. Diesels have become very popular, primarily because they use less fuel. You can get more kilometres out of a litre of diesel than a litre of petrol. Diesel is the most commonly available fuel in the outback. Modern turbo intercooled diesel engines outperform petrol engines. Even with a diesel, you will still need long-range fuel tanks for remote travel, whereas with petrol, you'll find even with long-range tanks, you'll still be taking jerry cans as well to carry extra fuel. Number 9, towing. If you need a four-wheel drive for heavy towing, you'll need lots of power and lots of torque. Err on the side of more power and more torque. Don't plan to run the vehicle at the limits of power or the limits of the towing capacity. Many four-wheel drives have high towing capacity but are low on power. We have a 2.5 tonne van that we tow, and my tow test is I want to be able to tow the van uphill, overtaking as easily as I can, not towing. So I want power to spare. And you need to ensure that you'll be within spec for the GCM. That's the total weight of your tow vehicle and your trailer combined. Number 10, accessorising. You should decide on what aftermarket gear you want before you buy your vehicle. Because you're going to spend at least $10,000 and you want to make sure you've got the right vehicle to start with. And you want to consider the impact on payload. Every kilo of aftermarket gear you put on is 1 less kilo of payload. Depreciation on accessories is high because you may not get much back when come time to sell. And if you're putting an aftermarket suspension with a 50mm lift, which I'd highly recommend, you just want to check that you'll still fit in your garage. And you want to make sure every change you make to the vehicle is legal. So in conclusion, consider these 10 points carefully and get the right vehicle. You will always regret making too much compromise and ending up with a vehicle that really doesn't satisfy your needs. So there you have it. There's 10 things you need to know about buying a four-wheel drive. And remember, your adventure begins the moment you decide to go. Not bad.